14 edition. It's week 14 already, John, of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod, a subsidiary of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We thank everybody who's been listening along, following us, subscribing on YouTube, checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. John, 5 weeks left in the season, man. This is wild. Every year, it completely, it feels like you just jump from like week 7 to week 14 all of a sudden. But man, we got a lot to talk about. We have our final week where teams are on bye. We say goodbye to the Cardinals and the Commanders this week. We'll live with that. That's fine. This is probably the best bye week situation of the year. And we will start by talking a little bit about Thursday Night Football. We'll talk about that one for the live listeners. I'm going to say with confidence, John, partially because we've already missed the deadline and partially because I never considered it, we're not using this game in Circa.
Yep, that's the only real certainty for this game, along with the only other certainty being this is going to be tough. This is the NFL testing whether we really love it or not. We do. We're going to watch it anyway. It is what it is. Circling back quickly, the Commanders and Cardinals being on a bye is very consequential for my really crappy RotoWire staff dynasty team. I got Howell and Kyler. So I am starting Kenny Pickett tonight. So it all ties together. Yeah, I had to scoop him. Can you believe that? I'm not Kenny Pickett. Mitch Trubisky off the
okay,
waiver
all right.
wire.
Well, I mean, that's slightly better. But honestly, you're probably looking at a difference of like 3 to 8 fantasy points tops.
Yeah, from a quarterback, it's it's not great. But either way, beyond that, the way that I would bet this game is anytime touchdown for both defenses, and that's about it.
I don't have a whole lot. I do a private DK contest with some of my college buddies for every Thursday night game. And this was tough. Like my buddy sent out the link this morning and everybody just responded like, Jesus Christ, man, what am I supposed to do? Like, normally it's fun to see the strategy. This is it's the showdown style. So you have to have a captain. Oh man. I mean, I might captain the medical tent. I don't know. Can you captain the ball? Can you captain a punter?
My guy Lib Crusher on Twitter, he's a big football DFS guy, and he was like, they should let us use punters tonight in fantasy.
They should. I mean, if you're in a PPP league, you get a point per punt. I would be totally down for that. We won't go too deep on this game, but the last thing I'll say is I personally don't think there's any chance that this turns into like a flip the script type of game. And we look back, we're like, wow, that was so much more fun than we thought. Like, I think we're 100% locked into like a 13 to 10 game max. Sometimes these games will surprise you. Like, I thought the Jags were going to blow the doors off the Bengals. And even before Trevor Lawrence got hurt, that was a tie game midway through the fourth quarter. You didn't expect that out of Jake Browning. I just don't foresee a world in which, 5 hours from now, we're like, man, Bailey Zappi threw 4 touchdowns tonight.
Yeah, like this is one where sometimes you just get what you deserve. Like the Bears Panthers game, like everyone's like, this is going to be god awful, and you know what? We were right, and I think we're going to be right again on this one. This is going to be a tough watch. Just hope everyone gets out of it healthy, and that there's a couple of entertaining gaffes along the way.
All right, we got through that. That's going to be the toughest part of the podcast. Now we can talk about the real games. We'll get to the Sunday slate. I did the Circa preview video with Jim Coventry earlier today. Great dude. Saw him at the holiday party on Tuesday. All-timer. Love talking with Jim. We were actually in agreement. We each, blindly picked 3 games that we like most. We had the same 3. So I think that is a great omen, John, going into week 14 of the contest. And as we always do, we'll highlight some of the games that are under consideration. One that will not be under consideration, at least for me, John, is Buccaneers-Falcons in the early window on Sunday. Falcons 1.5-point favorites right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook. They are 2-point favorites in Circa.
Yeah, miss me with this one for the card. I mean, the NFC South, other than the Panthers, is impossible to figure out. I mean, like any week, anything can happen. Like the Bucs, occasionally they're plucky and they're fun and everything, and then other times they can't even cover 5 points against the Panthers. So it's like you're on my bad list for that. The Falcons, of course, they were playing in a game that, like, well into the game, it was 2-0 at one point last weekend against the Jets. Of course, they played in a game that finished 13-8. Yeah. I mean, it's just they're.
So did I tell you, John? I can't remember. I ended up at the local casino on Saturday with some of the fellas. We had a full day of watching college football. We're like, let's head over to Pato and place some sports bets, because if you're on site, you can use the Pato Sportsbook. One of my buddies he had entered sicko mode at that point, put together a 13-leg no safety parlay. And we're like, how could this lose? We're like frantically researching how many safeties have there been this year. We're like, dude, this is golden. Like, I can't even remember the last safety. It's like 25 minutes into the noon games, boom, safety in the Jets game.
It's just like, when someone gets like unplugged from the Matrix, like they're living this wild alternate reality, and then nope, done, over.
Yeah. Well, I got a great photo of him because, you put it in at the kiosk. They do have a window, like a traditional book, but it's just way easier to use the kiosk. And like it prints off the ticket. A normal betting ticket, if you put together a parlay, is like this long. I mean, it was like a CVS receipt or something.
Hell yeah.
Holding it up like a naughty list or something. It was unbelievable. But yeah, that was dead a half hour in. I don't have a strong lead on this game either. Like I said, it's a total pass for me. The thing about the Buccaneers is, like, at times this season, they've been able to score quickly. They can hit chunk plays to Mike Evans. It feels like he's their only option for that. But I don't know if Atlanta has that same dynamic. But I also think the Falcons are the more consistent team. They're at home. And I don't know how do we factor in Chris Godwin's wife going off on Todd Bowles on Instagram?
Ooh, that now a wrinkle in this game suddenly appears. Does the squeaky wheel get the grease? I mean, he got a touchdown last week on a end around or something, but no, he needs to get utilized more. Baker's never been like, it was such a toss up during fantasy draft season because they were going right in that same neighborhood of the ADP, whether you like Godwin or Baker, and it's like, well, Baker, for better or for worse, he likes to chuck it. Like he's not Tom Brady. Just get the ball away from me as quickly as possible, like it was the last two seasons in Tampa Bay. So it was always going to be Evans, I thought. I mean, it's easy for me to say that now, but I just don't really see a way in which like that. Baker just completely alters his approach to playing quarterback to placate Baker Mayfield. And I'm not sure it's an offensive coordinator or a Todd Bowles problem necessarily, but respect to her for at least coming at the king and maybe not missing.
Yeah, Mrs. Godwin, frequent listener of the podcast. We support you. Thank you for your vocal leadership at this time for the Buccaneers. Falcons are 5-12-1 ATS after a straight up win under Arthur Smith. They are 1-4 ATS in those situations this season. That's something to keep an eye on. I mean, we know Baker is terrible against the spread when he's a favorite, but he's only 23-21 as a dog. So it's not like there's this massive split there. And Todd Bowles, horrible, awful as a dog, 14-42 straight up in his career as an underdog. I'm passing on this one. I think, maybe you just hold your nose and take the 2 points with the Bucs. This could easily be like a 17-16, 21-20 type of game, but I don't really feel strongly about it. Are we allowed to move on?
Please.
Rams-Ravens, John, your team back in action after a bye. Ravens 7.5-point favorites at home over the LA Rams. That's the number at the DraftKings Sportsbook. In Circa, also locked at 7.5. Are we trusted Baltimore? Lamar Jackson, for what it's worth, did not practice today.
I know that's not a great sign. This is the first December in a little bit where Lamar Jackson, came into it healthy, but now that the illness crops up, apparently it's been going around the locker room. I think Lamar Jackson has missed a game due to illness before, so this is something I think it was against the Bears a few years ago. So keep an eye there, but it's not completely out of the question that Tyler Huntley makes an appearance in this game. But even before this Lamar Jackson thing came up across the wire, I saw an interesting stat from John Ewing, who does betting data over at BetMGM. He says, in the past 3 seasons, Lamar Jackson is 1-8 against the spread as a favorite of 7 or more points. So there was already, something to be said about him not doing what he should do when the Ravens are huge favorites. Obviously, this year, the other kind of prevailing narrative has been Lamar versus NFC teams that only see him once every 4 years. They tend to be a bit overmatched. I like the way the Rams are playing lately. I thought that they had Puka Nacua running all over the place against a good Browns defense last weekend. We're getting Marlon Humphrey back on the Ravens, but on the Ravens side of things. But at the same time, it's not the greatest corner personnel in the world, and that the Rams are going to be testing the corners throughout the course of this game. Much more that I don't think there's going to be much going in the run game. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be warm. So it's kind of just a weird setup there. And when you get the hook on top of the 7, I'm actually very, very interested in using the Rams.
Okay. Yeah, I don't love the Ravens at 7.5. I think I would like them at 6.5, but yeah, you could talk me into the Rams. And interesting note on the weather. It's also going to be very warm in Wisconsin. Like, I'm playing golf tomorrow morning, John. It's going to be December 8th. And I got a 9:30 a.m. tee time. I cleaned the clubs and put them away like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, good note there. I'm inclined to trust Baltimore. It's like, of course you get the Lamar Jackson is sick, note today, and chances are he'll be fine by Sunday, but you never know with something like that lingering. And I'm still a little iffy on the Rams. It's been pretty convincing these last couple of weeks, but at the same time, this was a team that I was kind of ready to leave for dead like 3 weeks ago. And Cleveland's defense a little bit different on the road, right? I mean, there's some pretty nightmarish splits in terms of how they perform at home and on the road. Those other 2 wins, coming over Seattle, that was a 1-pointer. They missed a field goal. I believe his time expired, and then the romp over Arizona a couple weeks ago. But for the Rams, this is kind of you need to win this game to feel good about your chances to make the playoffs. They do still have the Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants in their next 3. Those are all winnable games, but you finish out at San Francisco. So yeah, you could talk me into the Rams plus 7.5 here.
I think it's too many points for how the Ravens perform as big favorites. And I think if we're getting Lamar at less than 100%, you already are dealing with no Mark Andrews. Like I think that this could be a pretty hairy game, in my opinion, for the Ravens. And coming into this week, before I looked at the lines on Monday morning, my kind of expected line was Ravens -5 or 4.5. So I was honestly surprised to see it land where it was and stay there.
Bears-Lions, another early window game on Sunday. You'll see some 3.5s out there. The Lions locked as 3-point favorites in the Circa contest. I don't know if I trust Detroit right now, man. I know they held on for the cover last week. It was not convincing. It was extremely convincing early on. It looked like they had righted the ship. Things were moving in the right direction. They're up 24-3, and then you allow the New Orleans Saints to climb back into that game. Another week where you have some major letdowns on the defensive side of the ball. It really felt to me like it started in that Baltimore game in week 7. The defense looked so improved early on. Then they allow 500 plus yards to Baltimore, over 400 to a Chargers offense that looks like it hasn't really been able to move the ball on anybody since then. Even almost 350 to the Bears, almost 400 to Green Bay, and then a pretty inept and banged up Saints team last week. Do we dare trust the Detroit Lions, or is this maybe a spot to grab Chicago?
I would have loved it if it was 3.5 in the circuit contest for the Bears, but I think there's a good chance that the Bears can win this game. I mean, they played them close up in Detroit a few weeks back. I think it helps. Like, remember the Bears' last game before the bye? It was that Monday Night Football game against the Vikings, and they just ran the screen raid. It seemed like that they were not confident that Justin Fields could make all the throws, even though Fields during the course of the game proved that he could by hitting that downfield pass to DJ Moore to set up the game-winning field goal. So I don't know why they had the kitty gloves on Justin Fields the way that they did, but now 2 weeks further removed from the injury, I think that sets up well for him. It's not going to be like a particularly awful weather day, so that narrative for Jared Goff.
We got 13-mile-an-hour winds at game time, which that's not terrible, but it's not a plus for Jared Goff.
No, it's definitely not, but it still falls slightly short of the threshold of bad enough conditions where it's there's no way that Goff is going to be able to do anything in this game. But the Bears defense, I think, is actually looking pretty good in the Montez Sweat trade, looking pretty good. Jalen Johnson, good corner, playing at a high level this year. So that Lions defense, I think it is going to get tested by the Chicago offense. It should be healthier. I wish that Chicago could just look at what they did against Washington and be like, what, can we at least try that every week and see what happens? It seemed to work pretty good in DC. I like the Bears here, man. I really do. Even at 3, you risk the push and everything like that. But I feel good about the Bears in this spot. And to your point, I'm skeptical of these Lions.
I think the Bears keep it close. I'm not going as far as to say they win this game. But like you said, we saw it 3 weeks ago. Chicago absolutely should have won that. 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes for Detroit to end up winning that one 31-26. And that was in Detroit, and Jared Goff, 9-14 ATS in December or January in outdoor games. not ideal. Obviously, all those would be on the road for Jared Goff. And I'm curious to see, can the Lions run defense get it together? And they're down their nose tackle now. That's a huge loss defensively for a defense that has already slipped a ton over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Bears ran for 183 yards on this defense back in week 11. And I think the Lions know that's coming. I think the Bears are going to do it again. And I don't know that they could be stopped. And the Chicago run defense too, that's been one of the weirdest stats all year. It's like, for as inept and like bad as the Bears have been overall, the run defense has been pretty solid. And I still think Detroit, good enough offensive line. They're committed enough to the run that it's not going to be a game where, Montgomery and Gibbs combined for like 65 yards. Like they're going to get their yardage, but it's not going to be easy for Detroit.
No, I don't think so at all. So that therein lies potentially more pressure on Goff. Now, it is interesting where, I was talking about the level at which Jalen Johnson's playing. So, that might be a concern for Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially, but if Jameson Williams can emerge and start to be a real threat on the outside, then you have a Lions offense that's legitimately scary and one that I'm less skeptical of going forward, just because there's so much firepower everywhere you look, almost like a poor man's version of the 49ers as far as the personnel goes. But I just think at the end of the day, there's been enough concerning trends with this Lions team of late. I can't believe the way that they played, for the final 3 quarters last week against the Saints. I like the Bears here.
I've also already played Cole Kmet over 32.5 receiving yards. I like that quite a bit. Talked about the Lions rush defense slipping, but I mean, they've been hemorrhaging passing yards to New Orleans, Green Bay, the Chargers, whoever wants them, they could take them. 33 yards for Cole Kmet. I think that's pretty attainable. He did go under in the previous meeting, but that was a game that, Chicago jumped out to a lead, kind of tried to sit on it. He's gone over that number in 75% of his games this season. Colts Bengals. Shockingly fun game. I think we're getting chaos. I think this is going to be back and forth. I think this is going to look a lot like Jags Bengals on Monday night.
I do too. You get Gardner Minshew in the mix. It's always going to be fun. You get Jake Browning in the mix. And wow, I mean, that was Matt Flynn. If you're a backup quarterback, that's what you want to do. You one shining moment is going to get you like 8 figures for the rest of your playing career. Like, that's awesome. Good for Jake Browning. But I think that he comes back down to earth a little bit. I don't think he shreds Indianapolis quite as much, even though Indianapolis' defense on paper worse than Jacksonville's. Jacksonville must have just been shocked with what their game plan was versus what the Bengals pulled out or were able to execute one way or the other. But they looked to be on their heels pretty much all night on Monday. So now Indy kind of gets a little bit of advance warning to take this game seriously. Indy thoroughly in the thick of the playoff race right now. They're playing well on the road. I mean, they won in Tennessee last week in overtime, and Tennessee had been pretty good at covering at home this year. But the Indianapolis is awesome on the road against the spread. So I think that they are the pick here, and I wonder if there is maybe a little bit of like captive audience, public a little bit too taking away too much from how the Bengals played on Monday night and trying to apply it here. I like Indianapolis in the pick'em as it's listed on Circa.
I think we can't overstate how bad the Jags defense was on Monday. Not to take anything away from Browning, but the tackling was horrific. Tyson Campbell, I mean,
he was so bad. You see
God.
The G back there. I love Tyson Campbell, but man, he was a liability.
Yeah, I mean, it was partially just horrible scheming by the Jags and a really nice night for Jake Browning, no question. I mean, that throw to Chase for the 76-yarder, right on the money. That one also beat Tyson Campbell for the record. But yeah, I don't think we could just say, all right, Jake Browning, he'll just do that every week. There's going to be some regression naturally. But I think, you got a Bengals team now that's playing with a renewed sense of confidence. I think it's now plausible that they can make the playoffs. Like, I mean, they're only, I believe, 1 game behind the Colts, and obviously beating them straight up would be massive. You look at their schedule the rest of the way, they play the Steelers, they play the Chiefs, they play the Browns. Those are all teams that are ahead of them in the standings. Like, it's not outrageous to think that Cincinnati is out of this to play their way in. So I think we get 2 really motivated teams, 2 really chaotic teams.
Yes.
We saw the Bengals for some reason run 2 like wide receiver passes. The first one failed miserably. They were effortlessly moving the ball and then say, hey, let's do it again. Tyler Boyd, throw it directly to Josh Allen. I think you get that out of the offense this week. And, hopefully you don't need, a couple series of Jake Browning just throwing like 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage to get him warmed up. I think he's playing confidently. I would not be surprised whatsoever if the Bengals win this game at home. I do lean Colts. I think the Cincinnati defense performed much better against a Jacksonville team that just can't run the ball, period, than they will this week. It's been a bad defense for the last month and a half. So I think there's some regression to come there. But, I mean, this to me screams out 28-27. Like, we could have another overtime game for the Colts. I think it's going to be really close.
Yeah, the Bengals do just play wild, awesome games, do they not? I mean, the Texans game was one of the best games of this entire season. I thought Monday night, especially relative to expectations, was unbelievable. I think this game is going to be wild. I hope that this is one that doesn't let down. But, I think we both have this circled as one of the most entertaining and intriguing matchups of the early window. But all in all, I like Indianapolis here.
Jags Browns in the early window. Browns 3.5-point favorites at home. That's basically held throughout the week in light of the Lawrence news. I mean, we seem to have dodged a bullet in terms of a long-term injury with Lawrence. I mean, he was on the practice field today and looked like he was moving around pretty well. He's got some kind of wrapping on that ankle, but nothing too major. I mean, at first, obviously, you're thinking this might be the end of the season, right?
Right.
So one, to avoid damage to the knee and then have this only be what looks to be a relatively moderate high ankle sprain is a huge win for Jacksonville. With that said, you still lost Christian Kirk last week. I think this defense got exposed by a backup quarterback in Jake Browning. And even as a Jaguars fan, I don't know if I want Trevor Lawrence to play in this game. Like, this feels, if he's going to be limited and you're trying to protect him and you're trying to avoid taking hits, he's not going to be mobile. Like, this to me is a nightmare matchup, specifically on the road against that Browns defense that, again, has been so much better at home.
Yeah, it's like a miracle that play only resulted in an ankle sprain, like you said. It's like your season's not over now, but like maybe don't test your luck. Maybe see if you can just kind of like grit it out with CJ Beathard and get ready for when I come to town in a couple of weeks to see the Ravens and the Jaguars on that Sunday night game. So yeah, I'm with you there, where it might be more pragmatic, honestly, to just try to go in there and win with Beathard. I mean, it's not like the Browns are at full strength at quarterback either, depending on your opinions of Joe Flacco. But yeah, I mean, there are some concerning things to take away from Monday night's game for the Jags. I did think it was kind of interesting that Parker Washington came out of nowhere. I'm interested to see if he can continue to be a factor, especially with Christian Kirk being sidelined. But if this is Beathard, which I think we should go under the assumption that it will be, the Browns at home, you were just talking about the Browns' defensive splits at home. They've been a total terror defensively when they're, in their own house. And I think with the way that Press Taylor is predictable and bluntly, like, probably not that good at his job as the offensive coordinator here, like, if you're making a generational talent like Trevor Lawrence look pedestrian, or making it so like life so difficult for him, like, what's it going to look like with Beathard? I don't feel great about the Jags in this spot, regardless of the quarterback situation. So 3 points, friendly enough number. I think the Browns can get this done. And it's not surprising also that we have an over-under at 30.5.
At 3.5, if Lawrence does play, I would stay away. If it's Beathard, I love the Browns here. I think the Jags are going to be super limited offensively. And again, taking Christian Kirk out of the mix, and Zay Jones is banged up too. He ended up tweaking something in the fourth quarter before Lawrence went down. I think the Jags proved definitively last week that they might have, they're a bottom 3 run blocking team. They've been in that mix all season. And I thought that was the matchup for Travis Etienne to kind of, get this running game going, and they just couldn't do it. You're not going to be able to run the ball at all against Cleveland, especially if it's Beathard. They're not going to respect that whatsoever. And then it turns into, okay, CJ Beathard, you got to go win us the game. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't love the number at 3.5, but if it is indeed Beathard, that is one that I would be pretty confident using on the Circa card. Let's go to Panthers Saints. We got a battle in the NFC South. Saints 5-point home favorites. Is that a little too much, given all the injuries on the New Orleans side?
I know New Orleans is really banged up, but I refuse to give any credence to the Panthers.
They covered last week.
They sure did, and that stung. And the Saints continued their home ineptitude against the number. I think they are yet to cover the spread at the Superdome this year. Is it Caesar Sports? I forget who the presenting sponsor is now.
Caesar's Dome or something. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, we'll have to bleep that out then. Sorry. But beyond that, no, I think the Saints kill him. I think the Saints just, I know that they're banged up. I know that we don't know who's going to be in at quarterback. We see Taysom Hill also on the injury report this week, but I think the Saints are, despite what we saw last week for the opening stanza, like I think they have talent on that defense. I think that the Panthers have zero talent on their offense, despite what PPR slappies try to say about Jonathan Mingo or whatever. So I don't think the Saints are going to be able to, or the Panthers are going to be able to do much of anything on offense. And I think the Saints can do enough. And if it's Jameis back there, more than enough to win this one rather handily.
Okay. All right. You can convince me. I mean, it's the Carolina Panthers, for Christ's sake. I don't know why,
that's where I go off
why I'm offering any resistance here. These teams are combined 4-17-3 against the spread this season. They're 2 of the 3 worst in the entire league. And we were wondering last week, did the Panthers get a post-Frank Reich firing bounce? To me, they looked exactly the same. They were lucky to cover. It took a 2-point conversion at the end of that. They're 3 of 15 on third down. They still look slow. They're still boring. You still have no confidence that they could pick up anything beyond like a 3rd and 3. And Carolina, by the way, has gone 7 straight weeks without reaching 300 yards of total offense. They've done that in 10 of 12 games so far this season. The NFL record is 14 in a single season. So they're approaching that. It is a possibility that if they finish the season going under 300 for the next 5 games, they could set an NFL record for just total ineptitude. So again, I don't love this at 5, but at the same time, it's like, how do you value the Saints versus the Buccaneers? Maybe that's the question. Are they 2 points better than Tampa to you?
Right. I can't answer it with these NFC South teams that aren't the Panthers. Like they are all some version of the same thing to me, basically. So I mean, the Saints can have a week like the one in Indianapolis where the offense pops, and they can have other weeks where they can't do anything. I suppose they also crushed the Patriots, but that looks less cool in hindsight, more cruel than anything. But yeah, they've been bad at home, but I think the trend gets bucked here. The only team that can buck that trend is the Carolina Panthers.
I do have another prop that I want to note. I forgot to mention it during the Bengals-Colts breakdown. Gardner Minshew over 232.5 passing yards. That's another one that I've already played along with Kmet and a couple others that we'll get to. I think this could be another 40-plus attempt game for Minshew. He's done that each of the last 2. I mean, he went over his passing prop last week, like early in the third quarter. The Bengals have not held an opposing quarterback under 240 yards since week 5. So I think we're getting a really nice number on Minshew, 232.5. I like the over on that. Let's go to Texans-Jets. Big game for Houston. Big opportunity for Houston and Indy, I guess, technically, to narrow that gap and maybe sneak their way into the mix in the AFC South, especially if Lawrence doesn't play this week. Texans 3.5-point favorites on the road at the Jets. 33.5 is our total. Without Tank Dell, I have some questions, especially if Noah Brown doesn't play again this week. I also think the Jets are so dysfunctional. You have a starting quarterback who didn't even want to start this game. You have a defense that really isn't forcing turnovers in the way that you would like to try to keep them in these games. And the Texans' offensive line has slipped a little bit. Stroud's been getting sacked a ton the last couple of weeks. He is somewhat turnover prone, or at least they've kind of come in bunches this year. I still like Houston here on the road.
Well, you see Houston minus 3.5 against the Jets, and the Jets can't score. So you're like, is this a layup? But it concerns me.
Not a layup.
It concerns me, Nick, that this was 6.5 on Monday. Like, what's going on here? Like, there's something.
Is that simply Boyle to Wilson?
He's not. There's no way that Zach Wilson's worth that much. So I don't think
so either. But I think Tim Boyle's that bad.
He is that dude. Is in that garbage man. Like he's horrendous. There's no pushback from me here. But we're seeing 80% of the money come in on the Texans, and yet the spread is going in the opposite direction. Like, this is just one of those ones where it's like I have to admit that something's going on here that I cannot comprehend. I cannot figure out. Benson pointing out in the chat that this might be like the Texans. I think at this point that they are good enough to where they can, for better or for worse, like have a look ahead game or a letdown game. Like it could happen to them. Mm-hmm. It was a big win for them against Denver last weekend, of course. So just the way that this line has moved and everything, I'm suddenly very scared of this game in a way that I wouldn't have been if like the line opened at 3.5, but the way that it's gone from 6.5, I'm like, that something stupid is going to happen here, and the Jets are going to cover.
Okay, yeah, you can sell me on that. We're getting the hook at 3.5. That's where it locked in Circa as well. Again, I think the Jets defense has become a little overrated, and it's not necessarily anything against them specifically. they're getting dragged down by like the malaise that is the offense. It's like almost it's like no matter how well we play, it doesn't seem to matter. And you start to see them like they're getting a little chippy. They're kind of infighting a little bit. They're pushing and shoving after plays. Like it's a defense that just looks kind of fed up to me. But take Dell out of the equation. This is not a deep Houston team whatsoever.
No.
And that line movement is scary. That is a big movement. I agree with you. I think some of it is just getting Tim Boyle out of there, but that's probably too big of a movement just specifically based on that.
Exactly. So I could see it being worth 2, but 3, something else is at play here. And again, the books, tightening the number while all of the money is pouring in on the Texans. Again, something is amiss here, folks.
The Minnesota Vikings on the road at the Las Vegas Raiders. Vikings are 3-point road favorites. Our total is 40. I like the Raiders here. I think this is too many points. Vikings, coming off a bye. That's fine. Josh Dobbs also has lost 2 straight now. Looked extremely shaky against Chicago. Yeah. I do think that was a one-off game. I heard somebody at a podcast this week describe it almost like Josh Dobbs had the yips. And I kind of feel like that's accurate. Like I think his confidence was shot and he was just playing scared the rest of the game. I do think, on balance, Josh Dobbs has been a very good quarterback this season. And I don't think he's going to be that bad again. I think that was just a weird one-off. But again, the Raiders have been competitive, man. I think they're still kind of riding the post-McDaniels high. Like they're not completely out of it in the AFC. I don't think they're going to make it, but mathematically you could convince yourself internally that you're in that mix. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if the Vikings win and cover this game, but at the number, I can't take it.
This one is really putting my brain in the pretzel, and there's so many ways you can argue for both sides here. Side comment: doesn't it feel like the Raiders have been on a bye for like a month? Like I've memory hold all of their games since I don't know when last. They just simply don't exist in the old memory bank. But beyond that, I mean, like positive things going in Minnesota's direction. Like you get to have the bye after the bad loss, and you get Justin Jefferson back in the mix. Like that's huge. It's not an overly intimidating environment that you're going to on the road. It's not a great team that you're playing against on the road either. But I don't know if I'm pushing back on the Dobbs thing, but I do wonder if there's like a kind of the Dobbs cycle that we're starting to see develop where, he started the season like first 3-4 weeks of the season, he was like literally useful in one quarterback leagues. And then he was, waiver wire fodder after that. So, and then, I wonder if we're seeing a similar cycle starting to develop in Minnesota where he starts hot and then he gets figured out a little bit more, although he has way more help, obviously, in Minnesota than he did in Arizona. But this one's a big stay away from me. I can't really find a great way to justify the Raiders either. It's just more like I'm concerned with putting my faith in Minnesota right now, even with those positive things working in its direction.
Yeah, if it was 3.5, I'd be lobbying for the Raiders at home. At 3, complete stay away from me. We got to pick every game against the number for staff picks and for my weekly article. I went with the Raiders there, but it's not one of my 5 favorites by any means. No. We got an NFC West battle out in San Francisco as we move through the late window on Sunday. Seahawks at the 49ers. San Francisco, one of 2 double-digit favorites this week. That number is up to 11. This one locked, John, at 11 at the Circa Sportsbook earlier today. You might still find some 10.5s out there. Not sure it really matters. I'm at the point where I'm just back to like blindly picking San Francisco every week because when they're healthy, man, I think they have definitively proved that when they have their guys, I think they should be 10-point favorites over 2/3 of the league.
Yeah. I mean, what we talked about it last week, like we threw out the possibility of them just wrecking shop in Philly. That's what they did. And, I don't think that they slow down. Like, I think that they're mad that they even had that 3-game losing streak to begin with. And they've been just insane since the bye week. And one of those games being against Seattle on Thanksgiving, and they crushed them. I'm surprised to see, maybe it is just because of the number being as high as it is. But I think maybe people are putting a bit too much stock in Seattle putting up a fight against Dallas last week. And I think that them losing that game is pretty deflating. All things considered, they played their A game and they still couldn't get it done. Going to San Francisco as your consolation prize there, the way that San Francisco is playing, like it basically would require a letdown from San Francisco. I don't think that happens in a divisional game that's important as this one, especially when, now the Niners are a game behind the Eagles for the 1 seed. Like they're going to keep their foot on the gas. And that's just a really scary prospect for Seattle. So, I mean, I could see San Fran winning this one by 2 touchdowns or more.
Yeah, I think motivationally, you mentioned it. You got, not only are you 1 game back of Philly with the tiebreaker, but Philly's at Dallas this week, right? And I think with a pretty easy schedule after this, Philly's still probably the best bet to get the 1 seed, but you're not just assuming that by any means if you're San Francisco. So I think you're still pushing hard here. Obviously, we saw this game 2 weeks ago. Does a rematch matter to you? Familiarity within the division? I mean, that one was at Seattle.
Right. I mean, it's tough. And again, Seattle, like I was ready to leave them for dead. Like I was lobbying hard with you all the way up until the Thursday lock to go with the Cowboys last week. And, obviously glad that we didn't, but I think that was it smells a little bit like Seattle's last gasp. And I think that they come into this one. I mean, also injury wise, not that they would have been able to run the ball on San Fran, but you have Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, like both missing practice on Wednesday. I'm not sure what their deal was on Thursday, but neither of those guys could be expected to be at 100% here. Like Seattle's going to need a miracle to win this game or keep it really close. So I don't see them doing that 2 weeks in a row, doing the Niners.
All right. Yeah, you're never going to get a whole lot of pushback from me when we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm with you on that one. Quick message from our friends at Circa. We love the Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Far and away my favorite book, my favorite place to stay when we're out there. And it is still football season at Circa Resort and Casino. They got the best pool in history, stadium swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game from college to the pros. Catch all the action poolside from a variety of seating options. We're talking day beds, cozy day beds, no less. Ooh. Private, temperature-controlled cabanas. They got their own TVs. You can put on whatever game you want. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino, is open 365 days a year. All sports, all seasons. You can book your stay today at circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. Bills Chiefs. John, why does this game not feel bigger? Why does it not feel bigger? It's still huge, right? I mean, these teams aren't performing maybe at the level that we thought, but Kansas City obviously leading the division. They're cruising toward the playoffs. Buffalo absolutely needs this game to hang around in the AFC. They got plenty of help last week, that's for sure. But Buffalo needs to start stacking wins. The schedule's not easy the rest of the way. They're still a 500 team. They are 1.5-point dogs at Arrowhead. Right.
What did the line used to be though? It was 3 earlier this week. But to your point there, why does this game not feel bigger? Well, the Chiefs haven't looked like the Chiefs really much at all this season. And the Bills obviously haven't held up their end of the bargain either. The Chiefs obviously still in good shape here. You don't expect them to totally melt down, but season's on the line here for the Bills. This is a house of horrors for them. They've had some toughies go against them over the Josh Allen era. But Allen, for his own part, plays extremely well when he's there. I think it helps that the Bills are off the bye. Some weirdness that I woke up today very confident in the Bills. The weirdness about the McDermott speech kind of makes me wonder what's going on in that locker room. What are the vibes like? But maybe they put that aside for this game, trying to slay the dragon, trying to beat the Chiefs, trying to get themselves back into the mix for the playoffs. So I liked the Bills at -3, and it's a much tougher number to cover with it being 1.5. They almost basically have to win to do it, but I think that they can. I thought that their loss against Philly, it showed some heart and some gut and some good stuff. I thought overall from the Bills. The Eagles, just in that type of setup, they've got the alligator blood to hang around and find a way to win that the Bills might not have. But the Bills still, I thought, played really well in that game. I thought that was encouraging, even though it was a loss. I think that they've had 2 weeks to look ahead to this one. I think the Bills get this done. And from a futures perspective, there's kind of a friendly number out there for the Bills to make the playoffs. It kind of has to start this week, but you can get them at almost 4-1 to make the playoffs. And with all the chaos that's gone on with the rest of the AFC as far as the quarterback situations, most of the AFC North and so on, I don't know, man. It wouldn't shock me if the Bills make a run here. It is a gauntlet to end the season, but when you're looking at that type of number on the Bills, a team that a lot of people would have picked to win the AFC coming into this year, I'm interested.
I think the Bills are making it. I've been saying that for weeks. They got the Cowboys next week at home, at the Chargers, home for the Patriots. They should win those two, at Miami week 18. That could be the one that decides it. I think you have to go at least 3-2, possibly 4-1, depending on what happens with some other teams. But there's going to be a lot of carnage. There's going to be a lot of cannibalization, with teams like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Houston and Indy. So I think the path is there. But like you said, it starts with this game, and I'm on the Bills. They've had their letdowns. They've lost multiple games that they should have won. They put up over 500 yards of offense on Philly. The offense has not been an issue. The turnovers have been an issue. You think about that Denver game, the Cincinnati game. But I think this is a spot where they could jump on Kansas City. I thought it was really concerning how that Kansas City defense looked last week against Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. They had some injuries throughout that game as well. And it was really jarring to see the Chiefs get the ball back down one score and not be able to finish it out. Right? I mean, how many times do we see that situation? And it's almost a given that Patrick Mahomes is going to move them down the field. Now, if they call what should have been an obvious PI on MVS, things are different. But I think, and I subscribe to this, like the universal take after that game was, yeah, that should have been called. But I mean, Green Bay outplayed them for 4 quarters.
They did. That they're a kind of ridiculous, unnecessary roughness to kind of help put Kansas City in that position. Mahomes was in bounds. You're allowed to hit him. Okay. But yeah, I thought Green Bay played better. I think, we'll get to Green Bay at the end of this, but I love the way the Green Bay is playing right now. Yep. But beyond that, something's rotten in this state of Denmark, right? When it comes to the Chiefs, like Kelsey, just looking at the personnel that they have, he needs to be Superman. I think he's too old to be Superman. I think we're starting to see the beginning of his decline. And you know what? Justin Watson and Rashee Rice, as much as I like him, like that's not going to save it for the Chiefs. And Mario was talking about it on the pod earlier. This is not completely out of character for Andy Reid. Like he stuck by terrible receivers in Philly basically until he got fired.
The Broncos and the Chargers, John. This is one that Jim and I agreed on. I talked it through with Jeff Erickson on the show this week as well. I really like the Broncos plus 2.5. I guess I understand the line. I don't necessarily agree with it whatsoever. I think the Broncos, I think to me, this is a pick 'em. If you want to give me Chargers -1 at home, you got a big quarterback advantage. That's about it though for the Chargers. I'm a Herbert guy. I will continue to defend him. Where are the other advantages for the Chargers? You're down Joey Bosa. You're down basically every receiver but Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler looks like a complete shell of himself. I got some props that I'll talk about for this game as well. Denver, I wouldn't say they should have won last week, but they had a great chance to win. You're knocking on the door with, I think they had 3 or 4 plays, right at the goal line essentially to try to finish that one off. And Russell Wilson threw his 3rd pick of the day. That's something that Denver, had. They had some luck coming around, I think, on the turnovers. Like they had forced so many turnovers. They weren't really turning it over for the last 5 or 6 weeks. That was bound to change at some point. But I also think, Russell Wilson on balance has done a much better job taking care of the ball. And a couple of those picks by Derek Stingley were, elite cornerback type of plays that I don't necessarily put on Russ. The interception at the end, it wasn't great. You also had to force that in there on 3rd down. I like the Broncos plus 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much just love betting against the Chargers, like just on principle. Like they're a miserable bunch. It's not good. Staley's not long for this job. If he's still hot or still employed this time next week, I still don't think he'll be employed come January. Like you said, like what can the Chargers do well? Well, their offense was so, reliant and dependent on having these multiple stars, and all of a sudden you have a loss of Mike Williams, and then you can't make that up because Quentin Johnston is basically doing his best Jalen Reagor impression at this point. And then Austin Eckler gets hurt in the first game of the season, and all of a sudden he comes back and he doesn't look remotely like himself. So the only thing that works is Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen will, get it done in this game. But beyond that, there's nothing that for the Chargers to hang their hat on, really. Khalil Mack is playing pretty well, I will say, in Bosa's absence. But beyond that, there's just not a lot here to like about the Chargers. There's no home field advantage here. There's no intimidation factor when it comes to the Broncos coming in here. So I know the Broncos slipped up last week, but suddenly Houston's a tough place to go in and get a win. Right. So you can't blame them too much for that. And they were right in that game till the very end. I like the fact that the Broncos are dogs here and we're getting points. So give me the Broncos. Yes.
I wouldn't even call last week a slip up for Denver. That was a 50-50 game. You lost to
I
a
felt
good
wrong
Chargers
saying
team, or
it.
you lost to a good Texans team, right? I think that was especially for a team that was rolling and it kind of felt like they probably should have been tripped up once or twice over that 5-game winning streak. I think that was a defensible loss for the Denver Broncos. It wasn't something that set off any alarm bells for me.
No.
I'll throw out a couple prop bets that I like from this game. I love Eckler under 49.5 rushing yards. Like, this number is like, we're docking 5 yards every week for Eckler at this point. I still like the less or the under on this one. He looks washed up to me. The concern is that the volume is always going to be there. Like, even last week when he was just gaining like 1.5 yards per carry, they still ran him double-digit times. But he's now gone under this in 6 of 8 games since coming back from injury. And I like the over on Keenan Allen, 7.5 catches. I think the Chargers are going to have to abandon the run pretty early, as usual. And Keenan Allen, even last week, like he went under this number, still targeted 9 times. He had 30 targets over the previous 2 weeks. Did Keenan Allen? I mean, he's got 7 games this season with double-digit targets. So I think on the Charger side of things, it's going to feel like a very pass-heavy approach, and obviously a lot of those targets will be funneled to Keenan Allen. But we like Denver plus 2.5. That's one of my favorite plays on the board. Eagles Cowboys, baby. Sunday Night Football. Dallas, a 3-point favorite at home at DraftKings, although the line is sitting at 3.5 at Circa. Do you have a play here, dude? I lean Dallas 3.5. I don't know.
I love Dallas.
Ooh.
I love Dallas in this spot. I think that this is a huge opportunity for them. They get to even the season series against them and against the Eagles, and also be tied record-wise after this game. So Dallas has been nails at home. I think last week was the first time that they didn't cover a spread at home. They have the rest advantage, whereas the Eagles just got completely the doors blown off them on Sunday afternoon. So that helps in Dallas's favor as well. I don't know, just kind of a general comment here. I pitched this to Mario earlier, and he had good rationale as to why that might be. But does it feel a little bit like Philly's kind of like desperate with some of these like in-season signings, or like, having to trade for Kevin Byard, having to pick up Shaq Leonard off the scrap heap, even though he can't really do much anymore? It's like, are they just trying to like patch things up with Flex Seal and try to win the Super Bowl this year? And they're kind of overexposing Jalen Hurts as a passer. Mario is making that point. He's not a 40 attempt a game type of guy. I think in an ideal world for Philly, it's an efficient 30 pass attempts per game type of deal. So if they get behind here, they get out of their rhythm. I think Dallas could kind of lean on him here and make this one a bit ugly.
I don't have a problem with the signings. That's just kind of who Philly's been. They're like the Warriors or the Lakers. Signing DeMarcus Cousins. They're just going to do it. I mean, who did they sign last year? Like Ndamukong Suh, right? And you can make the same case.
Linval Joseph.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's like a red flag necessarily. I mean, obviously Shaq Leonard is a much bigger name than a producer at this point, but I don't know who else is out there. And I don't really have a problem with teams bringing in veteran depth. But yeah, your point stands nonetheless. I mean, I have big concerns about this defense. Even in games that they were winning, they squeaked out that win against Dallas, due in large part to a bunch of penalties, on the Cowboys' part late in that game. Barely beat KC, barely beat Buffalo. On one hand, a lot of credit goes to the Eagles for finding ways to win. That's something that's tough to quantify. I mean, you're also just hemorrhaging yards lately. I mean, they gave up almost 500 yards to Washington a few weeks back, over 400 to Dallas, 505 to Buffalo, 450 plus to San Francisco last week. And this is going to be by far Dallas's toughest test at home this season. I know we talk a ton about how dominant they are at home. Well, it's because they played a bunch of bad teams. Right. I think we get a close game. Like I would be very surprised if this looks anything like Niners Eagles last week. I think the Eagles keep this close, no question. But I do lean Dallas at home. I think Dallas right now is the more polished team, and I also think for Dallas, I think their mindset will be kind of what San Francisco's was last week, right? Where it was clear that game meant more to the 49ers than it did the Eagles. And I think this clearly means more to Dallas. It
does. And I've been so reluctant to buy in on Dallas under McCarthy. And, over the last couple of years, Dak hasn't been great, but he's been phenomenal this year. Like I'd be interested in him in the MVP. And I think if he wins this weekend, then, all of a sudden we might not see Brock Purdy atop the MVP standings, which, it's dubious that he's even there. It's give it to Tyreek Hill for crying out loud. But I think that Dak is playing extremely well. This is a gettable secondary that Philadelphia has. So I'm all over Dallas here.
All right. We got 2 Monday night games. They're both starting at the same time. 8:15 Eastern. Titans Dolphins. Miami biggest favorite on the board this week. They are 13-point home favorites for Tennessee. I lean Miami here. Call me a sucker. Yep. I like it. I don't think Tennessee is very good. We saw the Dolphins go on a 2-game road trip, blow out both of those teams. The narrative is, it's different when they're away from home. It didn't look very different to me. You played 2 bad teams in the Jets and the Commanders, but man, I think this team is peaking at the right time. I think pretty much everybody's healthy on that offense, and I don't see Tennessee keeping up. I think this is a Tennessee rush defense that has been decent this year. Jeffrey Simmons is not playing this week. That is massive. I think that might be that's as big of a singular absence, for a unit as just about any defensive player in the league. I really believe he's that good, and I think that's going to have a huge impact on the rushing defense. Their pass defense is already bottom 5. As long as Miami doesn't have some sort of weird letdown defensively, I think this is a 30-plus point afternoon, or not afternoon, I guess night for the Miami Dolphins. And as long as you could keep Tennessee under like 24, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, and Tennessee's good at keeping itself under 24, so that certainly helps. I think that this Dolphins defense sneakily has been playing a lot better over the last little bit. I know it stinks that they lost Jalen Phillips in that Jets game, but they still have some dudes, and they're playing well on that side of the ball. So I think that this is going to be a stifled Tennessee attack on offense. And yeah, to your point, it's a pass funnel that plays right into Miami's strengths here. We haven't seen the mammoth game out of Jalen Waddle. I wonder if that's coming pretty soon. But, Tyreek Hill is inevitable at this point. Tua's locked in. No Jeffrey Simmons means that Mostert and Achane should have a lot of room to run. So it's hard to not like the Dolphins, even with the big number.
Packers-Giants is our other Monday night game. Green Bay, 6.5 they're giving the Giants. 36.5 is our total. Love what we're seeing from the Packers. Jordan Love has played I think his 4 best games of the season, within the last 5. I think you could say he's played his 3 best now in succession during this winning streak for Green Bay. Sunday night against KC was a magnum opus. I think that's what you've been wanting to see from Jordan Love all season. I'd like Green Bay to win the game. 6.5 though on the road. I think I'd take the Giants to cover. That's a little too much for me.
I know, right? Like it's weird. I want to throw cold water on myself for feeling good about the Giants covering this one, because the Packers have been captivating. They've been awesome over this last little bit. Love them to make the playoffs and everything, but it's like how are the Giants, how real is the Tommy DeVito thing, right? And they are coming off the bye. They've got additional time to get ready for this one. It's at home and all that, but I think it's got to peter out at some point. I've never been a Tommy DeVito believer, even dating back to college. I'm happy for him that he's played well these last 2 weeks and gotten the Giants a couple of victories, but I think the Packers are the far superior team, and I think that they keep this momentum going. But I understand being concerned enough about covering 6.5 on the road to leave this one off the card. But if I had to pick a side, it is the Packers.
Yeah, I just worry about some of the injuries. We'll see if Aaron Jones is back. He was a limited participant today. I think he has a chance to return. I don't think Christian Watson's going to play. Looked like he tweaked his hamstring for the 10th time in the last 2 years last week. And, Jaden Reed's been banged up as well. Limited again on Thursday. Green Bay is one of those teams that guys are always trending in the right direction, and then they release the injury report, and you're like, what the hell? 3 guys that we thought were playing are now sitting out. So yeah, I think I'd take the Giants here, but at the same time, it's pretty easy to see this being, 27-20. Maybe that's even too many points for the Giants. Green Bay should win this game by a touchdown, and I do think 6.5 is a friendly number. It's just it's a little bit jarring for me. I don't know if the Packers have fully earned that respect yet, but at the same time, what have the Giants earned?
No, 2 kind of weird wins against 2 of the worst teams in football. It's going to look a lot different on Monday.
All right, let's get to parlays, teaser, locks of the week. We'll be on our way out. John, my parlay of the week, we're going with the classic 3-teamer. I'm taking the Niners to cover 11. I'm taking the Broncos to cover, I think they win that game outright, but they're plus 2.5. And I'm taking the Buffalo Bills. We got 2 dogs in the mix here, plus 1.5. That gets you to about plus 600.
Okay, I like that. I like what we're seeing there. Let's. I like how you included some teams that aren't always in the mix, like Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay. But let's go, man. I like that. For me, I like the Bears plus 3.5. I like the Rams plus 7.5, And then alternate spread worked for me last week. I'm going to go back to that. Well, Dallas -6.5. That's plus 144. Tie those three things together, you're about 8-1.
Okay. All right. There we go. I like the creativity. We're going with a 4-team 7-point teaser this week. We are teasing the Baltimore Ravens from -7.5 just to -0.5. They just got to win that game against the Rams. We are teasing the Chicago Bears up to plus 10.5. We are teasing the do I have the wrong game here? Why do I have the Miami Dolphins? Oh yeah, we're teasing the Dolphins down to -6. Okay, I copied and pasted it incorrectly, but we're teasing the Dolphins from -13 down to -6. And we're just giving ourselves a little bit of a cushion with Denver. Again, I think they win this game outright, but we're teasing them up to 9.5. I think at the very least, they lose that game by a field goal. That gets you to plus 200. So we got to get back on the right side of these teasers, but I feel pretty good about this one. Give me your lock of the week, John, and we'll head out.
It is Dallas. I really like this setup for the Cowboys this week. I think that they're going to make some noise on Sunday night. I think that their offense is too much to deal with. I think their defense creates a little bit too much havoc, and I think that the Eagles are having an internal struggle right now, and I think it gets a little bit exposed on Sunday night. Give me the boys.
I like Dallas. I like Buffalo. Obviously, I like Denver. But you know what? We're getting a little saucy. Taking the Dolphins. We're taking the Dolphins. I think I'm 3-0, and I've decided to actually take the Dolphins with a huge number this season. -13. I think the Titans are terrible. I think this is going to be a game where Miami's approaching 30 points, maybe at the half. They've had a couple of those this season. Give me Miami to cover the 13 at home. We are locking them up. John, love breaking down these games with you every week, man. Looking forward to our conversations over the next couple of days. Locking in that Circa card. Should be a very, very fun week of football. Enjoy Patriots Steelers tonight, whatever that means for you and your household.
It means I'm picking up my girlfriend from the airport and happily doing it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening along. Everybody who chimed in the comments. We appreciate everybody who's followed this season. It's been a lot of fun. And best of luck to all of you betting the NFL this season, betting the NFL this weekend. We will be back next Thursday.